The later 1970s were the years where personal computing really began to enter the household. You may have heard of machines like the Altair, the Commodore PET, or Radio Shack's TRS-80, but you probably never heard of the Exidy Sorcerer. Exedy was one of the largest creators of arcade games during the early period of video games from about 1974 through 1986. The company was founded by H.R. Pete Kaufman. The name Exedy was a portmanteau of the words excellence in dynamics. The Exidy Sorcerer was a little bit advanced for its time. It was the first PC with a built-in cartridge slot. Sales were particularly strong in Europe, and especially in Australia through Dick Smith Electronics. Not so great here in the US. The Exidy Sorcerer has a Zilog Z80 CPU running at just over 2 MHz. It came with 8K, 16K, or 32K of RAM, and its display output was composite video only. It was black and white. It had a display resolution of 512 by 240 pixels, 64 characters by 30 lines text. Also unique to the Exedy, or the Sorcerer, was that it included several ports on the back that at the time were add-ons to other computers. It came with a serial port and a parallel port, both already included. Some computers at the time you had to add those as options. It had an external S100 bus storage expansion box that allowed it to have floppies and other S100 bus cards. My Exedy is a rarer US version, and it was generously donated to the channel by John. Thanks, John. Let's go down to the bench and have a look inside of my Exedy. Serial number 02060-136. Model DP1000-2. 110 volt model. On the back of the computer, we have an expansion bus connector, which would have been for an external chassis. I think it had an S100 bus chassis available for it. Parallel interface, serial interface, microphone, earphone jack for hooking up a cassette player to put data in or out, save your files out, composite video out, a fuse, and a power switch. On the side, over here, we have a cartridge port. This was one of the first personal computers to have a cartridge port, and it would use what looks like repurposed 8-track tape cartridges. That's exactly what that is. That is an 8-track tape cartridge. There's where the spindle roller would have been right there, the pinch roller for the cap stand. So they repurposed 8-track tape carts, and that would just slide in there and plug in. So then you got BASIC loaded. So pretty nifty. Standard QWERTY keyboard. Shift lock is actually a locking switch. Graphic key, which I guess you'd hit that and then you'd get these character graphics, which are above each of the characters here. Little graphic symbols. Return key is kind of small up here. 2 reset keys. Run, stop, clear, repeat, rub. Ooh. Oh, that's not what that means. Control key over here. And then we had a numeric keypad, standard numeric keypad here on the side with plus, minus, divide, and times symbols on the extra keys. No function keys. This was before that. Up here there's a template slot or place where you could, I guess, put labels on, and this is glued onto the case. So I wondered if they had different templates that you could put up there. So that's pretty much it. On the front of it here it just says Sorcerer Computer. Yeah, that's the machine. I'm going to set my little TV on top of here when I hook it up, and we'll see what we get out of it. But first, let's open her up and take a look at the board. Well, now that we got the screws out, let's open her up and see what we see on the inside. Oh, there's a keyboard cable there. There we go. There's the inside of the Sorcerer. Keyboard's connected over here. Looks like a pretty straightforward matrix. I can see where there's a chip here and a chip. Oh, that's the connector for this. There's a chip here, so that's probably just a line driver up here on the keyboard. And we got the main board. It's all one single board with a power supply. So let me reposition the camera and we'll take a closer look at this board. Here is the main board on the Sorcerer 2. It's a Z80 based computer, which I probably already mentioned. I'm shooting this video out of order. But we'll compile it back together in proper order. One nice thing about the layout of this machine is that they have labeled things. There's written all over the place down here by the parallel port connector. It says parallel on the board. Parallel interface is up here, and it's next to this chip, which I've already looked up, and that is basically a, well, let me give you the exact, it's an AY31015D, asynchronous receiver transmitter. It's a UART. It's a serial interface chip. It takes binary data in and buffers it and communicates it back to the CPU on the bus. So this is our I/O chip for the parallel and the serial port. And up here there is buffers and line drivers for the serial port. A little bit of analog circuitry here for the video out. This is composite video out, so these are going to be drivers for that, and encoders that are creating the video signal. The actual video generation is up here, and it says on the board video generation. So this chip up here will be a character ROM. It's hiding behind that power cord off the transformer. And then this would be the associated circuitry that's actually going to create the output display, which is a text display. All glue logic up here that's just managing the bus and passing signals. Memory's up here. Now this one has 16K of RAM in it. At least I assume that's 16K because the dip switch is switched. Switch 3 on, 16K, so that's going to be 16K RAM. Interesting, because there's two unpopulated banks, and the documentation I think said this had a maximum of 32K. So, I don't know. Anyway, 3 rows for memory up here. It's labeled row 1, row 2, row 3, processor RAM. CPU interface, these driver chips here, drive this bus connector, which is the cartridge slot up here. So a cartridge, which I have one for BASIC, is basically just a ROM chip that when you plug it in, it inserts that ROM memory into the memory map, the 64K memory map somewhere. And then there'd be an instruction to jump to it, or maybe the processor checks a certain memory address and jumps there. In fact, you know, I'm probably wrong. This is not a character ROM, or the character ROM might be part of it, but this is actually the ROM for the computer, which is going to have the code that the processor executes. The only thing that this machine has on board in that ROM is what's called a monitor, which is a basic machine language monitor. It's a simple textual interface that lets you do nothing more than put values into memory, read values from memory, jump to certain memory addresses to execute things, and so on. So you would program this thing without a cartridge. You would program this thing in machine code. You would input opcodes directly into memory and then execute the memory. So it's about as simple as they get as far as personal computers go. There's a tape interface over here, audio in and out. So you'd have a tape deck that you would save your programs to or load them in from by default. I'm going to have to try to use the computer to feed WAV files to it, to load programs that way, which I have found a great archive online where somebody else has already taken the time to produce WAV files from a large library of software for the Sorcerer, so that's great. The power supply normally sits there. Here is the power supply board. I was just working on it. I replaced these 2 capacitors. This one tested fine on the ESR meter. The one that was here is starting to bloat just a little bit on the top and had about 1 ohm of ESR resistance, so I decided to go ahead and replace it. The other one here on the negative 5-volt supply had a little bit of ESR resistance as well. I mean, these were 1978 was when this computer was made, so they're quite old. So I went ahead and replaced them. The power supply is pretty straightforward. This is a 7805 regulator, which I think provides negative 5 volts. This is a 7812, yeah, 7812, which provides 12 volts. And this is an LM, it's a 7906. I think that's a high current 5 volt regulator. I'll have to look it up. But that would make sense because this is all 7400 series logic on this board. So that's a lot of current that all these chips are drawing. So this would be a high current 5 volt section. It's a linear supply. You've got bridge full wave rectification here and bridge rectifier here. So it's, it's just a transformer, bridge rectifiers or full wave rectifiers and filters, and then linear regulators to provide the voltage through this connector onto these riser pins onto the board. Oh, the voltages are labeled plus 12, plus 5, plus 5, plus 12, minus 5. So yep, this 7805 is going to be producing the negative 5 volts, and this is going to be our high current 5 volt supply here with the big heat sink. So that is the board in the Sorcerer 2. Pretty straightforward. We're going to hook it all up. I've got a composite capable little TV monitor. Hopefully we'll be able to get a picture out of it, and if so, I'm going to see if I can load a game or two or some software into this thing and make it work. Well, just hooked up my little TV and powered it up, and looky there. Exidy Standard Basic version 1.0, copyright 1978 by Exedy Incorporated. 15,592 bytes free. So we have 16K of RAM. That basic cartridge is working, and I've got to try the good old standard here. Let's see. 10. Print. Oh, I love the sound of that keyboard. Hello, world from 1978! Exclamation point. What do these graphics characters do? Let's see here. By golly, they are graphics characters. Now if this works the way it used to work with BASIC, that semicolon at the end will eliminate the line feed and tie this to that, so we'll get a sort of a diagonal scrolling hello world. Okay, 20, go to 10. List. Yep, our program's in there. And here we go. Ha-ha! It works! It works! How about that? That is so cool. Does Control-C break? Yep, Control-C breaks. Oh, can you see that bottom of the screen? No. Overscan on my screen is screwing things up a little bit. I can't see the bottom of the screen. I wonder if there's a setting on this TV for overscan. Normal. Oh, there we go. Now, kinda. That gives us our 4:3 screen, but we still have just a little bit of overscan at the top of the screen. You can't quite see that top line. It's cut off because of the overscan, but I can see the bottom. Well, no, we're missing one line at the bottom too. So this old TV does not allow us to compensate for the overscan. 10, we'll just change line 10. Print. Hello, world. List and run. So there's the more classic hello world. A little bit of tearing on the screen during the scrolls. Probably has to do with the way the video signal is being generated. Control-C. So the basic cartridge works. Let me turn it off. And we'll pull the basic cartridge out. And we'll turn it back on, and we should just get a monitor. Yep. Top of RAM is 3FFF hex. Stack begins from 3F90. Question mark, will it give us a list of monitor commands? No. Help? No. Well, I guess I'm going to have to go dig up the manual for this thing and find out what the monitor commands are. And then I'm also going to go and grab some software for it, set up a cable to allow the computer to play a WAV file to it, and we'll see if we can load a game into the old Exidy Sorcerer. Well, this is exciting. So I made up a cable to go from the headphone jack on my bench computer, which is an old Intel Mac Mini, like the first Intel Mac Mini, the Core Duo. Working great. I can watch YouTube on it. It's not running OS X, it's running Linux. But anyway, I found some files that have been converted to WAV format for the Exedy. I ran it took me a moment, as you can see, to figure out the commands. These files are in 300 baud format, so it's going to take a while to load. But you had to set a variable, t=1, which tells the monitor that you're going to load 300 baud files. And it took me a few tries to get it right. Actually, the commands have to be capitals, have to be capital letters. So SE space t=1 tells the monitor we're going to load things in 300 baud. LOG, load and go, tells it we're going to load a file, and then go will jump to the address of the file. I didn't know if it was going to work, so I started playing the audio file, and after about 7 seconds it said found chomp, which is a Pac-Man clone. It gives the address that it's loading it into in memory, 3200, and says loading. And now I'm waiting. So I don't know what's going to happen when it finishes loading. If it does, I don't know how much memory it requires. I've got 16K in this machine. That might not be enough. It might require 32K for this program. Well, that took a while. I had to experiment with volume levels, and I'll tell you what, it was a pain. The audio file for this Galaxian game is 5 minutes long. So one time it got to 30 seconds before it said CRC error on the tape. Another time it got to 2 minutes. I would change the volume levels, coming up slowly, coming up slowly. I got to about 90% full volume on the computer, and I finally got a full load, and there we go. We have Galaxians running on the old Exedy. Keyboard controls on the numeric keypad, 4 and 5, move your ship, and spacebar fires. There's no sound. There's no built-in speaker on the Exedy. Apparently the game does support sound effects if you hook a speaker up to the parallel port's output pins. I'm hesitant to try that. I don't want to run a risk of damaging this machine in any way, shape, or form. Oh, the machine works. How about that? Isn't that neat? I don't know what I could do with this machine. It's a nifty old computer. I love the old keyboard. Might make a text terminal out of it. Use it with my Linux boxes or my server. I don't know. It's just neat to see this old computer from 1978 actually running. So, that's the Exidy Sorcerer. Loading. Did I get him? Yeah, I got them all. How about that? On to level 2. Is there a level 2? Yep. Looks like more of the same. Ah, that's fun. Yeah, now, okay, it's getting more more difficult. They were moving faster. I think that's that. can't tell what level I'm on. But they had a floppy drive interface for it. Being Z80, I presume there was probably CPM available for it. We've got a basic cartridge. I know there was a C compiler for it. This was back when computing took patience. Oh! Phooey. Anyway, there you go. The Exedy Incorporated Sorcerer 2. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also, if you're not already a subscriber, click to subscribe. Join us on the Facebook channel for discussion about the videos. And if you'd like to help support this channel, please click to support me on my Patreon page.